Welcome, world's largest dungeon fans, to another live stream event in anticipation of our world's largest 20th anniversary campaign, which is kicking off on May 13th. But until then, we'd like to give you guys some previews of what's in store for the campaign. And of course, my camera's having issues, so hopefully you can still hear me. Tonight we have got Austin Sizer, the miniature sculptor extraordinaire, who is going to walk us through some of the design process of the 18 boss miniatures for the campaign. So welcome, Austin.
Hey, how's it going?
Barring technical difficulties, not too bad, sir. Not too bad.
Yeah.
So tell us give us a brief introduction. Who are you? Where can people find you on the socials? And how did you get into the art of digital sculpting?
I am Austin Sizer. I basically fell in love with monsters ever since, being a kid, reading Lord of the Rings and just, fantasy and sci-fi in general is just where it's at. But on socials, I'm on Instagram as SizerWorks. SizerWorks.com is my website. You can find me if you just search SizerWorks. It'll pop up all my different things. I basically fell in love with ZBrush pretty early on, which is the software that I use to sculpt everything. Pretty early days, whenever it was still not great. It's still, not the most user-friendly software, but it's, it's the best in the biz, as they say. So, but I just fell in love with its potential and, just essentially being able to, if you can figure out how to work through the UI and everything else, you can pretty much make whatever you want. So, I just kept going and here we are.
Nice. So as a digital creator, is there a specific project or moment that really sparked your passion for creative design? When did you decide that, hey, I want to do this professionally? I want to go in and be an artist.
Well, it's been a weird ride. I've kind of worked in a bunch of different design industries, from commercial graphics to even construction design, and then motion graphics, to Unreal Engine stuff, doing like LED volume backdrop stuff. So really, I've always loved drawing, and that's just always been my outlet. And so going from 2D to 3D, it just seemed like the next logical jump, because inevitably I would like to be making movies or animated something. So doing 3D just made sense, and maybe that isn't for everybody, but it definitely did for me. Just being able to create one asset and then be able to reuse it across a bunch of different types of art just made sense. And I just love the potential that ZBrush had to offer. But as far as a particular moment, I don't know if I can say that there was just like a spark one day. It was like a very, very long process to get here. Really, it was pretty long. And I've just enjoyed the ride, really.
Did you start with physical sculpting, like physical mediums, or did you begin your sculpting journey with the digital?
I pretty much dove straight into digital. I have done some practical stuff. I love doing digital work, again, because you can iterate so much. And
the undo button is the greatest invention of mankind. Come on.
Oh yeah, Control Z all day. And you can't Control Z clay, and that's that's a pretty big drawback for me, because I use it all the time.
There's a reason they put it like Control and Z next to each other on the keyboard, or chose those two for undo. Because it's it needs to be the easiest thing possibly to push with two fingers.
And it's ubiquitous across pretty much all software that you're doing anything with nowadays. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, so the interesting about starting digital and being a digital creator is it kind of touches on everything from, I mean, the 3D printing revolution. Here we're actually delivering, miniatures, so you can definitely take it physical. But as you mentioned, like you're interested in like movies and the digital arts, things that go a very different direction on how things are finally produced. So, what is that like? How is your experience in motion graphics and using Unreal Engine kind of influenced your approach to sculpting these miniatures for a tabletop game that are static?
Well, it really all comes down to like depicting motion, gesture, and lines. I mean, it's all the same thing as if you're drawing. Essentially, it's just you can turn this thing around, So you're just thinking about lines from front, back, side, left and right. As you spin it around, you're that's really all you create dynamics through gesture. And yeah, I mean that, but it's interesting that like I started digitally though, but now it feels like I'm having the urge to, and that's really essentially where like me getting into 3D printing came from, is like having the urge to like have the stuff that's on my screen just be here in real life, which it seems silly from like a traditional standpoint. Most people, like, I don't know if most people do, but I know that traditionally people would sculpt in clay, and then they might take pictures of it or use claymation to create videos and or movies, Tippet and all. But I guess I'm kind of going the opposite direction with it, which has kind of been an interesting ride. But Unreal Engine has been fantastic because, I mean, revolutionizing how you can render things in real time. I mean, if I can take a model and do a turntable render in Unreal in 30 minutes tops, then as opposed to like taking it into something like even Blender or Cinema or something like that and having to do a full detail render that could take an hour. I mean, depending on your machine, obviously, but I mean, we're talking about Cinema 4D like back in the day. I mean, I would have set a render and like I'd have to go to sleep and come back and hope something didn't break. And with this, again, like the ability to iterate is so important when you're designing anything, because communication with your customer just becomes that much better if you can say, here, I made this thing, and look at it, and then they can say, no, that doesn't look good, or make changes, and you can iterate quickly. So I guess the experience in all the different design industries is kind of lent to my emphasis on communication, and the ability to iterate it's couldn't be more important when you're trying to give a client what they want. So
nice. When you're sculpting, what do you look for inspiration? I mean, are you referencing photographs? Do you get physical? Like, where do your source of inspiration while you're sculpting come from?
I mean, we live in a time where there's just an unreal amount of amazing artists out there, and we all look at each other's stuff just to see how they did something, and especially with something physical like a 3D print. I mean, you can look at the file, you can look at something that someone did and see how they accomplished a certain effect. But ultimately, I mean, nature is just really the best bet. I mean, looking at photo reference of, like, for instance, the worm. I mean, I would say, I think that was like the trilobite beetle, and there's like a bobbit worm that's like starts in the ocean,
yes,
and it just kind of like, it's disgusting. I hope I never step on one. But yeah, so, I mean, stuff like that is really ultimate. Nature is like your best bet. I mean,
yeah, those are terrifying. And yes, like, yeah. I love this miniature. Like, it's calling it a mini is like a wrong term, because it's huge at the scale we're doing it. But like, you can see how it kind of, I love how it bursts out of the ground. And our painter Austin, last week, Austin, Luke is the name of our painter. He mentioned that, like, this one, on some of the other models, he got very creative on the bases. He's like, oh yeah, I thought I really wanted to add some moss or liquid effects. And he's like, this one is just like perfect as is, just painted it the way it is, because it's just, it shows the bursting coming out of the ground, and it's just got a lot of, it's already very, very detailed. And I just love how like the body comes out and it does this nice like sinoid curve, and then you put a little like miniature of like a normal character in front of it. It's just this horrifying like comparison of, man, here's this monster just ready to devour this character, and you just see it's like little tiny character and then the big oh, it's great. It is.
Yeah, if it's 28 millimeter, dude, I mean, he could eat him whole for sure.
Yes, yeah. No, it's wonderful. The so on that, so we've got nature, we've got other sculptors. Like, any funny, like, weirdest or surprising reference material that you've used for sculpting?
Oh man, that worm was weird. That was having to stare at multiple angles of that was pretty terrifying. Oh man, I mean, you really go all the way back, to even mythological, stuff, just trying to figure out how things have been depicted, across time, and trying to, you're obviously not trying to reinvent the wheel, and I hope that comes across, but I mean, really just nature. I mean, I don't know if I'd say there's anything like strange, or everything's strange, really. if you put them in the right context and mash them all up. Yeah.
So that's for reference. This is the size of our Delver miniatures. Like, this is 28-32, somewhere there, and this is the size of the Nightworm. So, I mean, fits comfortably in the mouth of, that's just how nice and chunky this one is. And I mean, I just love, just look at that, the gaping.
Is that the same one from the slideshow?
Yeah, this is the same one.
Well, the lighting there, it's so cool because it kind of reminds me of the colors kind of remind me of like almost Starship Troopers versus like Tremors almost. So
no, yeah, I mean, what I love Luke's paint job, and like, I mean, this one's very interesting too, but like, I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if we can back up in the video and find it. And I love the Trent, or whatever you call them. Like, oh my God, that one's amazing.
That's probably one of my favorites, the tree ant guy.
Yeah, Luke was like, that was the easiest one to paint because you don't have to worry about, like, so you can see in here. Let me pause for a second, but you can get a little closer. But you can see I've got a very cool tone light on apparently. Let me see if I can't change that up a little bit. Let's see, can we get a little warmer? That's a little warmer tone. But you can see the details in those segments. And so it's very interesting, like the way you sculpted it. Like the borders are very smooth, and of course the camera decides to be a pain in the butt right now. But anyway, so the borders are very smooth, but the interior of the kind of the segmented pieces has got this very kind of like connective tissue, organic, just. It's a little people with trypophobia are not going to enjoy. No one's going to enjoy this monster except the game master who gets to throw it against his characters, because this thing is a feast.
I think on those parts, I was thinking about, like, especially that interior texture. I was really looking at like Geiger reference and and I mean, I was thinking, I guess the outside pieces, I wanted him to be able to slip through the sand if he was, I don't know. Thinking about it, but yeah,
no, it's particularly great. The let's see, so of all of us, so you mentioned, like, maybe we'll skip ahead and I'll do which one of these is kind of your favorite of the 18?
I mean, if I had to pick out of all of them, probably the worm, or I mean, I really liked my Hydra. Was fun. That one was that was a difficult challenge, posing all of the different.
Yeah, that one's going to be crazy. I think that's going to be the painter's night. Let's see where. Oh, there's the Hydra. Okay, let's get you the Hydra. This one. Okay, so from my perspective, is the guy who had to print these. Oh my God, figuring out. I know you gave us supports, but I had to print them much larger, so I could use the supports you gave. the supports, trying to figure out supports for all of those scales.
Yep. So you felt my pain, because yeah, that was definitely a challenge, and trying to figure out how to key that guy was interesting. I was really trying to think about, like, do I want to split all of the different heads apart and just have them be different parts? But I tried that. I printed it that way once, and I would never put anyone through that again, because trying to piece them together was a nightmare. And yeah, so I just made that whole neck piece one big keyed part so that it could just get stuck in. But the problem was that, as you well know, that being able to get supports through all those different heads to support all the different pieces, especially the teeth, that was a major issue.
Yeah, there's no perfect angle on like 3D prints, right? Because you want to avoid like flat sides towards the build plate, and then but anything that's occluded that isn't connected is another like that. So yeah, if you look at dimensionality, these upper heads, if the plate's down here, you have to have supports, and it's like, oh, great, hits here, but then do you really want a bridge? So yeah, there's just all this kind of stuff.
I think I printed him like 5 times total, because I just kept having issues with like warping and whatever. But the supports I ended up with, they printed well, and the one that I have that I printed to scale looks pretty good. It's actually that size. Yeah.
Right. I know that the heads are like the wow moment of this one, but I love his back, like the spiky ridges on the back. I mean, it's just a very cool. I mean, a little dinosaur-y, little like plates, but like just an awesome choice there that I think, I mean, really complements the kind of, they're like the crowns on the head, and just like, oh, that's unique and interesting and scary, and the and really kind of, I get your challenge too, because there's a way that a 2D artist can render this concept of like having all these heads, right? And biology doesn't really give us a great solution. Like squids, and they have tentacles, but like they're not heads in kind of the same place, and the way they're this has also got to be all these crazy heads on top of what is a 4-legged creature that walks on land,
right?
And
you can't have him just like stand there like with his all fours stabilized perfectly. You have to make him look kind of cool, or at least a little bit dynamic, which was really one of the bigger challenges as well, is like trying to make sure this guy isn't going to fall over. Because I honestly, whenever I got him to do a successful test print and I was actually able to stand him up, that was one of the bigger things I was concerned about, is this guy just going to tip forward? And luckily the heads are not that heavy really. So, and the bodies and the base are both pretty heavy. So, but yeah, as far as the spikes on the back, I was just thinking about, like, if I were a dude trying to address this guy, as a warrior trying to kill him or something, I think ultimately you'd want to try and get behind him, but then you get back there and you'd be like, oh, well, shit, I've got to deal with all these spikes, and then he spins around, you're done for. I don't know. It'd be a pretty difficult guy to address in general, but.
Well, right, and perfectly so. It was like that was kind of exactly my thought. Having not talked to you about this before, was like, one, oh my God, how do you reconcile like quadruped morphology with having to have all these crazy heads and have it work out? Because in a 2D picture you can hide things behind each other, and you don't really have to have it all line up perfectly and have a real answer on how the biology works. It has to look cool in the picture you do, the 1 or 2 pictures. But you don't get that luxury in a 3D sculpt, where you don't know what angle someone's going to view it from, or build it from, or paint it from.
So they're going to see all of them. Yeah.
Right, it's all of it. It all has to work, and that's the thing too. Is like you really have to have kind of a very large opening where the shoulder neck area would be, and so those spikes kind of keep it interesting, instead of just looking like, here's a very large receptacle for lots of heads. It looks like it's still a very cool.
Yeah, because if it was just like because actually the first iteration of that design was really kind of more of a carapace, like almost turtle shell kind of thing. Where he had plates stacked on plates going down his arm and stuff like that, which might have been cool, but it also would have called like super attention to the fact that it was kind of like a big turtle head with head's, it would have been more of a turtle essentially.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, and I ultimately I really have to think about where bones would be, and like how I'm going to have space for stuff like that, and how things are going to have to move around each other, you know, because ultimately I do have to pose him too. So, I mean, and usually I design things in more of an symmetrical, I design them more in like a T pose or A pose where there's more symmetrical. Oh, look. Yeah.
Yeah, so So I know you mentioned it. You're gracious enough to give us some kind of B-roll on kind of your design process. So why don't you walk us through the typical sculpting process and kind of initial concept to final product?
Well, unfortunately, throughout the process, I was more concerned about getting things done than recording them, which is the case, unfortunately, typically. So I didn't get to show you guys a whole heck of a lot as far as the overall concepting or how I run through this, but I can talk to you about it. So essentially, I mean, I would start, you know, by gathering as much reference as I can that's related to the topic, and just finding things I think look cool that might be related. And then it's all about blocking out shapes and figuring out anatomy as best I can. And yeah. And this guy, actually, the Kraken was by far the most asymmetrical design that I did. Actually, the face was sculpted mostly symmetrically, and then all the legs were actually designed as separate pieces that I was able to like do kind of like rudimentary rigging with, and then pose them independently around each other. And then, and it was a matter of like merging it all together and making the folds look like they, like it all was grew that way, you know? So, but usually like say for like the frost giant dude, or even some of the witches, the hags, those are more, I would say I started in more of like an A pose where a T pose where like I can go through and I sculpt the body as symmetrically as possible, because most humans, I mean, at least most of their body is pretty symmetrical, their faces, and there's always going to be asymmetry with humanoids, but then, you know, you go through and you create asymmetry through the details and all of the accoutrements and whatever he's got on him, and he's got a lot. That was probably one of the bigger challenges with him, is that he's got like all kinds of roots and skulls and bones and, you know, frosty tips on his shoulders and, you know, on his legs and stuff. And yeah, I wanted him to look like he had been living in the Arctic North for quite some time, and, you know, killed a lot of folks, and he's got some mammoths living, or on his belt and stuff.
So I think that the mammoth skull is kind of your little signature kind of wink wink nod nod in this campaign, because we don't have a mammoth miniature, but some skulls show up on him. One of the bog witches has a mammoth skull. I think there might be one in the board demon scat. I don't know. It's a cool little kind of reference I noticed.
The hag is actually a walrus skull.
Oh wow! Okay.
She made a cauldron out of a giant walrus skull.
Oh, that's a wall. Oh, okay, that kicks butt. Let me see if you can't get the skull is like, oh my god, it's so good. I mean, there were a lot of skulls here. Like we definitely had a little back and forth on like
death is ubiquitous.
Right. I think one of my favorite moments, and let's go see back and we'll get the let's see if we can find. Sorry, it doesn't give me previews, but where did we put the demon in this? There he goes. The board demon.
Yeah.
So a little funny thing about the board demon, we had actually a back and forth about the size of the corn kernels in the floaters for this guy, because he's got the base on this one is pretty great. So I'll give people a chance to check out the base. Because that's what it's all about.
Him over here.
Yeah, nice.
I don't know if it's the one that I don't know if it's the final one, but yeah. Oh, you've got him too. Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
Yeah, the scat skulls.
Yeah.
So we definitely had to given the size of this monster and the size of that adventure, this board demon is not just chowing down on human-sized humanoids. He
Yeah.
is
He's
eating
killing giants too.
frost giants for
Yeah.
his for
Yeah.
his meals. So
So we talked about that because like I think I provided two like alternate bases. Maybe I'm not sure. If I didn't, then I can, because I've got one with like other bones in it and then different sized skulls too. So I'm not sure if that's the one that you got there in the turntable is. Yeah, you can get a close up of my hair thinning. Yeah, I think that one's just got I think that one's got all the same size skulls, but I can give you guys the ultimate or the mixture of bones and whatnot, so it hits.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I mean, this guy. I mean, so here's the crazy thing. So the the original World's Largest Dungeon campaign has every monster in the SRD in it, but some of them are variants, and they come with sizes, and when you read them, like, it's not immediately apparent. Like, this guy is huge. Like this, several of these miniatures I printed larger to get them painted just so you could see the detail, because I am not an expert photographer that could really get like awesome lens to get the little tiny one that's painted perfectly. So I'm like, oh, let's just make it bigger so I can photograph it better. But this guy, I mean, this is 100% size. He is a chunky boy. Don't let my monster clodhopper hands, fool you. He is. Let me not break the other one while I'm showing off this one. Let's pull up the. So again, Dungeon Delver 28 millimeter with 32 millimeter somewhere in there for reference. And
that's cool.
Yeah, so like for reference, he's a big beastie boy of a boar. Yeah, he's a boar demon. And so that little pile he left, and I mean, I just love it. But if anyone's ever been to a farm with pigs, like it's kind of their thing. So it's fun. So
that's funny, because it sounds like if you look at that scale reference, it really seems more like his entire diet consists more of like eating giants.
Yes, right. The don't censor me, internet. We're just showing off some demon boar scat. Get over yourself. I don't know why my camera's on a protest tonight. At least the audio, which is coming from the exact same source, is still working. But we're doing it live. So So Luke was mentioning just like the to make him like super demonic. He just did these little dots on the eyeballs for the irises.
Yeah, I see that picture reference you have there. It's awesome.
So I mean, so speaking of painting, like during your process, like some of the miniatures have areas that are kind of very smooth and very up to interpretation on how the painter, the final artist, wants to paint them, if they do paint them or not. When do you is it by artist touch or aesthetics, or like when did you decide to go in and really put in like some texture and detail? Because like I think I mentioned last week, I really like, of course, the one model I don't have is the Chimera today, but he's got the Chimera because it's got a mix of like 3 different species or 5. It's like a lion, a goat, a dragon head, and he's all over the place. And but there's some very good detail.
I don't know if we'll be able to see them all, but
yeah. So on the body itself, even on the parts that are like closer to the lion in the middle, or the goat, there you still get those dragon scales that are very kind of cool and really come up. And Luke made some really nice technique to bring those out. When do you make those choices on like to bring in detail, or to just let the smooth shape be the final product? What's the choice or the thought process there?
I think the rule of cool is what ultimately rules the day. But I do think about that, especially when you think about like the worm or like the wings on the demon, stuff like that. Like I like to. I mean, it's a general rule in sculpture where you kind of want to have large areas with that are basically high frequency detail, or like what would appear to be almost no detail, to like larger to even larger detail. You want to kind of like spread that out throughout the design, just as a general design principle. So really that's what I was thinking about more. But then also, prior to finishing some of this, I was talking to some of the guys that were at ReaperCon, and that's a painting place. I mean, a painting con, if anyone is. And so a lot of those guys they really wanted to have areas where they could add their own touch to things. So I just wanted to give some areas where people could do stuff like that. But if an area just seemed raw or open and it needed something, then that's pretty much if it just seemed off without having details there, or if the details changed the design overall, or you needed those details to communicate who this person was. In the case of this one, she has stuff all over her.
Oh yeah.
I definitely wouldn't want to run into that lady.
Well, I want to highlight what you did here too. So this is really cool. So there are 16 levels in the dungeon, but there are actually 18 boss miniatures, because this one is a threefer. You get 3 different scales of 3 different kind of bog witches. And one thing I really love that you've done is the bases of these align. So you can see how like the little coastline and the swamp meet up on these. So you can run them separately, but like as a display piece, which again, these are all awesomely display quality, which is kind of an interesting choice on where you go in the hobby these days. Like there's pressure for larger painter focused display pieces, but these are meant to be played at the table too. And I think historically it was much harder to produce high definition quality in those. So the people made choices to have very chibi fatty spears and hands and heads, because those survived easier on the tabletop. And but they don't exactly look great if you're using them at scale. They look a little funny if they're actually scaled up to size or done in kind of a 65 or 60 millimeter plus size. Anyways, for this campaign, we are giving out STL, so folks will be able to print these at any size they choose if they've got 3D printing technology. But the scale they're coming with for the game is kind of the scale that they're mentioned in the book. And this one is surprising. Like if I were running this as a GM, I don't know if I'd noticed or would have noticed the scale on the 3 of them is so vastly different. And but I love that little design detail in the bases, that the coastline. So we kind of zoom in on the video so you can get a little better view of it. But nice touch, sir.
Thank you very much. It was fun to do. I had to at one point. Well, I designed the figures separately on their own little bases, but then I knew that was a goal of ours to have them be able to sit together. So I was like, how cool would it be if like the terrain matched up? So I had to, I designed all those bases in one file, like sculpted them all together and then cut them all apart essentially, or pretty much. That's pretty much how it went. But yeah, it was fun. And I think that the overall idea was to have that middle one be just a nasty hulking brute, of a witch, and then the other 2 were, more magic driven, I suppose. She just eats everybody, I think.
Yeah, I love this one that almost looks like she's drawing arcane power out of the goop, and the one right before her is just very animalistic. You get those fins. I mean, it's kind of Aquaman or Shape of Water. Yeah, Merlady. Yeah, just so good. And then yes, back to the skull. I do love the upside down skull, and you can see she's using it as like a brew pot. And, so good.
Yeah, that was so good. That one I really wanted her to look like she was kind of elemental in a way, like she could kind of control the water and bring up the mud and make it shape however she wanted to, kind of thing, almost a part of the water. So
I think that kind of brings up the question is like, how much direction did you really have on these versus how much freedom did you have to explore? Was there a back and forth process with the design team, or what was that level of here, Austin, go wild?
I mean, in all reality, compared to any other gig I've had. I mean, I had probably the most fun I ever had because these guys just, they were like, we want a Bargeist, like give me that. And so they didn't tell me, we want it to have certain features or what reference. I mean, they gave me like a general reference to kind of get me like in the ballpark, but they wanted it to be like just my perspective on whatever that is, and which was, it's pretty rare. I loved working with these guys. I mean, Strange Owl and JM and everybody over there. Just, it was amazing. By far one of the best creative experiences I've had. So, I mean, I can't wait till we can get another one going.
That's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, how did you get involved? Like, did you know JM before the project, or?
Well, I worked with him on a different Kickstarter for and just another guy was creating a tabletop game, and he needed more. Really, I found out the guy was making a tabletop game, and I was already watching some of his stuff on YouTube, and Richard Rollin, and so I reached out to him. I found everybody on the Discord and like reached out to him. I was like, hey, I would love to make a mini for this thing. It would be amazing. And so they kind of shoehorned me into the whole Kickstarter thing that time. And then like, I guess I made a good impression because like 2 years later, John Matthew was like, hey, we would love for you to quote, or, work with us on this next big thing. We've got a really big project. And I was like, heck yeah, like, let's go. So, so that's, I mean, yeah, it was just, I pursued them very diligently in the beginning, and then, yeah, that stuck, I suppose.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Cryptrite is like, he mentioned, yeah, you get your foot in the door, and then here we're going to hand you a lot of stuff because as the guy who had to do like the 3D printing is kind of the intermediary. So you got the instructions from JM and like what was out of the world's largest and kind of what the as much detail as we had for you.
Right.
And then I was the guy like, okay, 3D printing, and then get liaise with our production team, who's actually getting these manufactured in mass. And even before that, like we for Gen Con last year, we got the gibbering mouthers, where we did a miniature version of them as a handout, and so we needed like 500 of those, and it came down to like I had a brand new 3D printer, was just learning the ropes at the time, and I think I got through like 350 of them before my screen conked out, and I was like, I can't get a new screen in before Gen Con, so we had to have Reaper step in and help us get a bunch of them printed. So I think Reaper did another 250 of them, so we gave out a ton at Gen Con. But in that process of being of doing the prints of like the cryohydrate, all of them really, you and I had a really good back and forth on just figuring out like poses and alternates, and there wasn't a whole lot of back and forth. But I think one of the changes we had to make for practicality, which I regret having to make it, is and I love this figure, the rat sorcerer. This figure is gorgeous, but in the first version Austin did, you can see in the back there's this kind of large boulder that is in place, and it looks great. You wouldn't notice, but this is not the final size. This is the actual rat guy is much more. He's slightly smaller than a dungeon delver,
Yeah,
and so
22 or 20.
Yeah, he's tiny. I mean, he's he's a little bit bigger because he's a rat sorcerer, but he's not much bigger. And the initial pose was kind of one of those like Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee kind of amazing, Shaolin monk contra pose, like pull in the ground and you're stepping on it but holding it up at the same time. And love the concept. The problem is like the width of the staff when it's small enough to hit the base is just so small that all of this extra mass on top, like unless we printed that part out of metal or whatever, it'd be too fragile. We get too many people who would break them before they painted them. And I think you did a really great. I mean, I love that miniature. And I printed it and it didn't break. But I'm like, oh, this is. I can see people who like a mass production facility or people at home not being as careful. But so I've got mine. It's still very small, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I can even give this to our painter. So we had a great back and forth, just like, hey, how can we still preserve the very nice angles of it? It's still got that great kind of, verticality and all that. And so you really kind of really stepped in and like, fixed a design problem that would technically go against a cooler artistic vision, but really preserved all of that vision, but still made it like, okay, this will survive the tabletop. That was great.
That's when, like, being able to work with a team and just knowing when someone else's perspective, you have to listen, and if I realized that what you're saying was right, and I was like, man, he's right. This is probably, somebody who, doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of experience, possibly, just starting out resin printing or whatever, could easily pull that thing apart whenever they're pulling supports off, and it would just snap off, and then they're angry, and then we get, we don't want that. One of my bigger goals throughout this, and I went through the trouble of like providing supported versions of every file. So, and one of the big things that I wanted to make sure of is, like, I hope that people have as little trouble as possible printing these guys. Barring any technical issues that somebody might have or whatever, I hope that that's the case for everybody. And I'd be happy to help people, in the Discord server or whatever, if they have issues, and I personally have a mixture of resin that I use that works amazingly, that I started using because I kept having just water-based resins, or like it really just regular resins by themselves, non-mixture, snap, like you drop them and they fall and break, and it's just, they're really brittle. So I started mixing like 20 to 30% of a flexible resin with like a fast printing resin. So if it falls, it has just enough give in it to where it just won't break on you. And it's really good whenever you're like snapping supports off. So it has enough brittleness that you can get the supports off without like it bending, but also, won't break. So
yeah, no, I learned that lesson because I think the very first miniature I printed was the Chimera large, and I was not using. I hadn't found my mix yet, my formula, and so I didn't have the ABS is kind of the one I turned to.
Okay.
For the little Sunlu is kind of a decent price for that. But so I just did it on kind of like a bone colored standard resin, and it looked gorgeous. But yeah, it was very brittle. So that was the one that, coming back from Gen Con, did not survive the airlines. Thank you, airlines. And so the funny thing is I've got a whole plan for how to get these to the next Gen Con. Now that they're all painted, it's like, oh, we got a whole bunch of them. So I'm thinking I'm gonna like empty out a Samsonite and do like custom foam and spray foam and like pick and pluck foam and just like armor case. I have a whole suitcase just for these. So we don't have to trust, TSA not to be, what's this?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, but yeah, no, what as long as we're in this neighborhood, I think my experiences with I picked up a Saturn 4 Ultra as my printer, and then I have rapidly gone to the kind of Sunlu ABS is either the main resin or definitely a component resin, and I've been experimenting a little bit more like with you said, like making your own mixes. I didn't like the water washable ones I tried. I think they were all the convenience of water washable was not met by the robustness of the actual resin. So I tried that a couple times. Like, let's stick with the finicky or toxicer ones that you actually need to use, ethanol or isopropyl to wash with. But what's your experience there on the 3D printing?
Well, yeah, and like you said, I had issues with, using isopropyl alcohol all the time, and just like it's just nasty to use all the time. Yeah. What's the solution? Like I've got the Elgu Mors 4, I think it's the 4K version, whatever it is. Nice. It's done fine for me. I mean, people buy 8K, everything, or I think it goes even higher now, but
oh, and all that's just marketing spin. It turns out it's like the only real thing that matters is the pixel size of your screen. And for human eye, all the printers in the market for like the last 10 years are basically indistinguishable. Like it's
my 4K prints. These guys like super tiny, and I can see every detail I sculpted. So, and I know what's supposed to be there. So like,
right, true, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's ever been a time with that printer where I printed something, unless there was a fail or like a support knocked something out or something like that. But I've never seen there be any loss really in detail. I mean, you get some shrinkage, but that's really it. And that's part of the curing process, and that's just it is what it is. But yeah, I like my Elgu. It was nice and cost effective. I got the wash station and the curing station and everything, and then I use Soraya Tech for there, and it's kind of a little bit more pricey to buy them together, but yeah, I use their fast present. I see Cryptrite with the resin puts FDM to shame. I actually now really want to get a great FDM printer though, because I want to print some big stuff. And
right.
I really want to get into like making props for cons and stuff for people. Like that'd be fun, or for myself, who knows? But all the post processing and stuff is kind of a pain in the butt. But
right, yeah. I mean, I'll maybe during the campaign I'll show people my actual setup. But if you have a landlord, you have to be there during the home walk to explain this is not a meth lab.
Oh yeah.
I got the funny thing about it is like the tent. It's a grow tent that I put it in because you kind of want to capture the air and then blow it out the window, right? But all of the grow tents are really by like maybe there's 2 or 3 home gardeners who really have orchids or whatever that really need very tight controlled areas. 90% of the market or more is probably people growing a certain illegal substance in most places, but is illegal in my state. So all the marketing is like you buy one and then they're like, oh, you're clearly growing. Like, no, I'm actually using this for resin printing.
So you have fan set up and everything.
Yeah. So and then the cool thing about it is like it's the grow tent on its side because the plants grow vertically. This I'm like, well, I need desk space, so it's on its side, and then they have a very cool like metered timed fan setup that I just inside the grow tent there's a frame, and then you can kind of either zip tie or bolt it or whatever, or what do you call those little carabiners? You can kind of carabiner it up, and so there's like a filter and then a fan, and then the fan itself kind of goes
with the tent.
No, separately, but there's designed for. Yeah. And that's the thing they don't tell you is like the printers are I mean, state of the art can do whatever miniature you want. 3D printers are easily under $500 now. I mean, I think the Saturn IV Ultra was like $400-$500. Like they have a new one that's got all some more bells and whistles. But I mean, for home printers, you can get the previous generations and still produce. Again, like as you said, no one will be able to tell the difference models. It's kind of the bigger build plate you have, the larger single model you can produce in the build volume. But even then, if you can separate them and glue them together too. So you're not really confined. But with resin, the uncured resin is sticky and has a smell and it's got VOCs, volatile organic compounds in it. When you cure it, and then when it prints, and when you cure it with the UV, you throw off more of those. So you really don't want it like in your bedroom where you sleep, where you're just kind of inhaling. Yeah. And then so when you wash it, so the thing is like when you get the miniature printed, kind of the rest of the uncured resin is clinging to it, and you need to get that off. You need to wash it off to preserve the details and just make it, a functional miniature. And the isopropyl alcohol, people at home probably use 70%, and it's still kind of very, you'll know you're using it. But when you combine 99% isopropyl and then it hits the resin, which it's kind of denaturing, then it really throws off. Like, I was not one of the people during COVID that decided to like go full on mask and crazy with all the. It didn't work. Like some people, I saw people who were doing the Walter White kind of thing. Like, oh, I know I find it difficult to breathe in those. Like I love scuba, but even then, it's if you feel a little claustrophobic having stuff in your face. I love wearing my Walter White setup for resin printing because when you get the right filters, you don't smell any of the alcohol. And I'm like, if that alone is just like, okay, you're not getting the headaches, you're not, contaminating your lungs, whatever. So
that's a good move. I need to get a better mask. I was just using N95s or whatever, but and the grow, I really like the idea of using the little the grow boxes. That's a great idea because, well, one of the things, I mean, I'm in my garage doing that stuff, and so it's less of an issue, but I mean, it's still like, it still lingers, so I would like to be able to push it out. I may have to like retrofit like a little vent into my garage door because I'm like right next to it, and I could do that, and just have like a dryer vent,
Well, that's exactly what it is, right? The dryer tube kind of comes out of it. And the nicer things, like it wasn't really designed for this, but it works great for it, is the interior of the grow box is it's got the mylar kind of
almost
reflective, aluminum foil kind of thing. And so with resin, you want to be careful to keep it away from UV light, which sunlight is. And there are suppressors in the resin that kind of try not to cure it in regular bounced light in your room. But I mean, if you're storing a tray long term or whatever, being able to zip up the grow box just means it's complete black zone. You don't have to worry about, it's like the old time photographers who use bathrooms to do develop their film because you need somewhere that you can really kind of light, keep away from light. And so that's nice too. Just having you zip it up, and one, it contains the kind of the smells. Two, the keeps it light so you can keep your resins open in the tree, in the vat there without worrying about them curing and turning into a brick. And the three, keeps dust and hair out because I got the dogs, so I mean dog hair is like almost everywhere. But then the other thing too is that for the detail, you kind of need to like remove supports and stuff. You kind of got to see what you're working with. You can put up little LED strips that are, you can buy cheap LED strips, and you can hang them in the kind of recesses of the grow box. And one, they don't. You make sure you buy the UVs that don't include natural light, that's got the right nanometers that cure resin, so you're not worried about curing your resin when you leave those on. And then the reflective light just means that there's a lot of really good light in there for not having to have like a big lamp here and all this kind of stuff, so you can actually get the light you need when you're working on them, and then turn it all off. So anyways, I'll send you a link with my setups. I found it off a guy who put all the Amazon links for his. But as I said before, they don't tell you like, oh, get a printer for less than $1,000. But then all the other stuff, the wash and cure resin is very expensive, even if you get like the cheaper resins. Yes, if you're going to print like a Warhammer army, you will save money versus buying theirs. But that's only when you're good enough to dial it in where you can print them without errors, right? The trial and error phase is expensive. And you think about the volume of these things, like twice the size is 8 times the volume. And so you do stuff like you learn how to hollow. Like that was the thing, is like a lot of our smaller miniatures should, printed at size for the table, should not be hollowed because you want them structurally stable and heavy enough to not be just flimsily knocked over. But this one is the size it's going to be. But some of the other ones, it is, yes. So that's basically you learn stuff like how to hollow prints to save on resin, and also it prints faster and better, and you're using less resin, and then you're not worried about anything inside it being uncured to blow it up or whatever it is. So resin is kind of fun. It's fun to deal with. Kryptonite's different. I'm with you on the I love resin, and resin was the best choice for what I wanted, like for miniatures and the detail. But the second I got a resin printer and got good at it, I'm like, oh, I should get an FDM now too, because I like you, I want to do bigger stuff, like just stuff I can use around the house, and there's like some cooler materials in the FDM space, that are just much more stable, much stronger. Anyways, it's kind of fun, but I really, long story short, I really enjoyed the back and forth we had together, kind of doing little tweaks and figuring stuff out. And I've worked with other digital sculptors, and the nice thing about you is you printed out all of your miniatures before you sent them to us, and sometimes there's people that are like clearly don't, like you'll get uncombined files where there's voids on the inside, or none of the 3D printer programs like them, so you got to go through and do all this cleanup for the files, because they weren't exported in the way that someone who's actually done a 3D print would expect. And so I appreciate that, sir. You're quite the professional. So
I'm glad that didn't go unnoticed. That was one of my bigger concerns, because I mean, I've purchased miniatures, and I've also gotten files that were just not great, and I had to fix them myself too. And I didn't want anyone to have to go through that. That's part of the experience, because ultimately, in all reality, I actually don't really enjoy the printing process that much. I really want to have the thing in my hand and make it and look at it and have it be done. And I like sculpting them. But the process of like taking off all the supports and, that stuff isn't really that enjoyable to me. So knowing that about myself, I'm like, surely there's other people who feel that way. So I'd like to make it as accessible as possible, within a margin of error. But yeah, so I tried to, I didn't want to send you guys files that were trash. So
they're all pretty great, and our printing partners appreciate it too, because they get stuff that's just kind of crazy. So it is much easier to do excellent quality when you got someone who knows the things that you aren't even able to communicate on the initial prospectus that you need, like clean, good files, et cetera, et cetera. So we appreciate it. So a couple more questions before we wrap it up for the day. If you could sculpt any dream project, like an IP creature collab with someone else in the an artist or in the field, whatever, what would it be and why?
Probably something from Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge fan of Tolkien, and so anything from that would be pretty cool. I'm surprised I haven't done that yet, but just for myself. But that would probably be pretty high up there. Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much would be pretty cool. So if I could do stuff with Weta, would be pretty sick in general.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they're listening, because you've got great stuff, and I mean, there's always right.
Well,
right?
Dude, everybody over there is just like far and away like unreal. I don't even. Yeah, so I can't lick their boots.
I mean, they do amazing stuff. But I mean, if you saw why did the director Peter Jackson? You saw Peter Jackson's like Meet the Feebles before Weta Workshop was like a big thing. It's this crazy, inane, profane, Muppet-driven movie that's just kind of crazy. And you're like, well, okay, humble beginnings. And then you see like Lord of the Rings, which is just like epic and classic and classy. I'm like, oh, definitely different.
Yeah, sorry if that answer was lame for some. I just kind of classic in that way. But
oh no, I mean, the tabletop RPG industry, the mechanics are built by Gygax, but I think the love of fantasy is probably most heavily influenced by Lord of the Rings. So I don't think anybody would be disappointed to hear, yeah, I want to do some LOTR kind of stuff. So yeah, that's fantastic.
I also have not done a whole lot of like sci-fi mechanical type stuff. So that's something I have on my near to do. I just got done doing a pretty nice Paladin night, but I mean, So armor I've done, but like I haven't done a whole lot of sci-fi, like straight up mechanical stuff. So that would be a lot of fun.
Well, excellent. The one last link to share for everybody. So we've thrown down sizerworks.com, which is where they can find some of your awesome stuff. But the Austin's locales. Here. Oh wait, I of course type it in the private chat. I'm going to be Austin Sizer locale. Here we go. Sorry, I can type and talk at the same time. So, folks, check out the bio.sizer works, and that is where you can find links to Austin's YouTube page, his ArtStation, his LinkedIn, and also contact him for getting hired and doing work. Because as much as we would love to command all of his time, we are not big enough to keep him employed 24/7, 365. So other creators out there, Austin is available. He's amazing to work with, highly recommended. You can just see even the proofs in the pudding on these miniatures. I think they are, I was telling Luke this, like, I think they are a very great hybrid of artistic quality miniatures that also are very practical for tabletop use. I think there are definitely folks who lean much more just utilitarian and folks who go crazy with, there's a game attached, but the real hobby here is just a really crazy miniature that's going to, gross out your family, but maybe really fun to paint or whatever. I think these really bring out the best of both. I think there's just, they're dynamic, they're cool, they're unique. I don't think any of them are very, already common tread in what's available in the market. Like stuff like this worm, like, I've seen other purple worms, and this one is just very unique. It is not derivative of, anything anybody else in the tabletop space is kind of really making. So I think you've really kind of hit it out of the park with this whole project. So hopefully this leads to much more bigger and better things for you with other folks and even other industries. Everybody wants video games because, video game money, and, they can afford 401ks and vacations. So
right.
Hopefully video game pays. But even on this many is kind of showing up. We mentioned before, like, lots of really great scales for those of us who can't pay them. But then, like, the wings are a little more up for interpretations. There's design on the ridges, but like the flaps in the middle are a little more up to imagination. So I don't know. I think you just made some really awesome choices in how you work, Austin. And I think once the fans get these in their hands, they'll all agree, and maybe find even more fun, cool stuff. But even little details like the depth on the top of the head, the carapace, I guess, of the Kraken. It is deep, and you can really do some cool effects in there, or it's just very easy to paint and get the depth from it if you're not an expert painter. But there's just a really awesome, that's just a really cool choice there to really kind of get more depth into the miniatures and take the risk of not just being. It's like you kind of like I think one of our comments before, I think Cryptide asked what software is used. So yeah, let's show this once again, and you can add what is your software of choice and kind of the your favorite tools.
ZBrush is the thing. Pretty much from start to finish. I sketch in Krita and paint in there and do a lot of illustrative stuff in there. But ZBrush is where it's at. I can take anything from start to finish. I can build anything in there. But and then Blender is great. It's I'm still blown away that it's not completely industry standard across the board. Mm-hmm. I understand why on certain levels there are just, I won't get into that, but that's awesome too. I just recently learned a lot about the rigging process in that. So hopefully the future minis will have even more dynamic posing because I can get them to do what I want them to do easier. So yeah, ZBrush, Blender, Krita, Photoshop, if I'm doing stuff, but.
There really are a crazy number of concerns there that are just different from industry to industry, right? So one of the things that I think with I hate to use the word lesser artists, because every once in a while, yeah, you can be the mom, and I love all my children equally. But in some of the more lackluster miniatures, I think you'll see the 3D artists are just not as risky in creating depth. And because if you look at how some 3D programs work, it is actually harder to create volumetric space. Like, it's kind of very easy to do very subtle, pulls and plucks and modify an existing surface. Well, I mean, like, none of your things look like, oh, that was clearly a sphere that he just did a little work on, or that's a cube. I mean, everything is very organic, and that's not easy to do. Like, a tentacle is not an easy thing to do, right? It is. There's no basic shape, like, oh, it's just a tube, but it's not. Like, it needs to vary wildly in the diameter of what's going on, and the so in less, more lazy, less skilled kind of sculptors, I've seen stuff where it's just like, oh yeah, that just looks very basic. It looks like, yes, it's competent, but it is not evocative of the imagination, or very organic in nature. And so yeah, I like that you never really. There's nothing here that I see is like, oh yeah, phoned it in, or was doing it for the deadline versus creating what really needed to be created, or what could be created with the creativity. So
I'm so glad that it came off that way. I mean, I'm so glad that you feel that way. I mean, I hope everybody else does. It does ultimately come down to basic shape language. And I would say ZBrush is by far the closest thing to dealing with organic clay. At least in portions of the workflow. I mean, you start out with your basic shapes, and then you can jam them together if you want and mush them around. And they have tools where you can essentially make infinite shapes, or, I mean, I think that one of these, especially the Hydra, if I have all of the heads at their highest resolution in the file, it's somewhere close to like 98 million polygons, in that one file. And at one point I had to like decimate all the heads down just so that I could work in the file and keep moving forward. So, I mean, and then you can take it and you just learn processes to like get it to a refined state where you can actually like pose it and add textures that you can then export, or get it prepared for a texture workflow in other softwares like Substance Painter or whatever you end up wanting to use. I really like the painting workflow in ZBrush to get at least a base. And I like using, that's like this guy here is painted in ZBrush just as like the base colors. I like doing that as often as I can, just so that I can start kind of trying to visualize bringing them to life. I mean, color just brings them to life more. And that's, the poly groups there where I've started breaking down the geometry into like workable forms and giving edge flow. And that's all video game stuff. But it makes it useful for texturing. And if I do at some point want to probably bring most of these into Unreal Engine and do some renders with them, and having UVs and good topology is useful. So
well, I mean, the experience really shows, and the I can't wait for the world's largest dungeon backers to get these in their hands, because I think they really do make a statement at the table. I mean, the response from Gen Con and from ReaperCon was just fantastic. Everyone who saw them was just very excited to get their hands on them, and so I mean, we are so close. We're less than a month away from the campaign. We've hit our hour, so I'll do the obligatory wrap up. But thank you, Austin, for joining us. It was great. We'll probably have you back on during the campaign to field some more questions from hopefully the thousands and thousands of backers who are going to be adding these to their tabletops. But so for everybody else, the world's largest dungeon 20th anniversary Redux campaign, it is back. We are launching May 13th on BackerKit, and So the keep an eye out for that. The you can find information from let me see if I got it. It is worldslargestrpgs.com. And so yeah, there's the web address is right at the bottom there. Worldslargestrpgs.com is where you can find out information about the campaign, the team, and all that good stuff. And then if any of you are aspiring RPG creators, we do have a Portals to Adventure contest that is running concurrently with the campaign, where you can submit an idea and a basic write-up for a secret door encounter that leads into the world's largest dungeon. And we have a contest that's going to be entirely voted on by fans. And so you can share a bunch of prize money, hopefully, get published in the book, and launch an RPG career. So give a look at that at portals-2-adventures.com. And the cool thing, because I think we're accepting entries soon, if not already. So yeah, you guys, if you are interested in that, give it a look. But other than that, one more time, I'll throw up the check out Austin's bio.site, Sizeworks, or search for Sizeworks. You can find his YouTube channel where he's got some really cool videos, some of these models as well, and some of the other work he's done. And yeah, if you guys are creators out there, throw Austin a bone. He's a great guy to work with, and we are very excited on what he might do for our next big campaign. But first, it's World's Largest Dungeon. So we will see you guys maybe again next Wednesday. We'll see. But if not, we are launching on May 13th. So we'll have a early morning pre-launch stream for several hours on May 13th, and several more during the campaign. But other than that, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hit the follow, hit the like, all those things, so you can see when we are live again. But World's Largest Dungeon's coming back, and there are, oh my God, I think there are like 12,000 people following the campaign already. So it'll be hopefully one of the bigger RPG campaigns of the year. And don't worry, we've got the tariff stuff figured out and all that good stuff. So Austin, again, thank you for joining me, amigo. It was great working with you on this project, and I hope to work with you again soon on even more adventures. Maybe we'll have to find a sci-fi thing to work on so you can scratch the sci-fi itch and like all the bolts ever. And
I'll have a workflow down and ready by the time you guys are ready to go.
Sounds good. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us. Get out there and play some games this week. And if not, get ready. World's Largest Dungeon coming May 13th. So save some of that money from your paychecks. There are some really big pledge levels for some really awesome stuff with like really cool dice and boxes, and it's cool. So in addition to all these gorgeous minis, you can really have a complete RPG experience. So we will see you all, if not sooner, on the live streams. We'll see you all May 13th for the launch. So take it easy, folks. Have a great night.